Hi everyone, Ted Wyman here with another edition of Jet Setting. I'm joined today by Sun hockey reporter Scott Billeck, and we are going to talk once again about the Winnipeg Jets and their start to the season, which has been interesting to say the least. A
Yeah.
couple of losses to start off, a big comeback loss. Minnesota Wild came back on them to win in the third game. The captain's in COVID protocol. The assistant captain and leading scorer, Mark Scheifele, is in COVID protocol. And yet the Jets win their next two games. What do you make of it all, Scott?
It's weird. It's a weird season. Down in the hockey sense, the Jets have done a much better job dealing with the loss of Mark Scheifele than they have in the past, and I think that's kind of what's kind of leading this. And they have different drivers that have been getting through it. With Kyle Connor, he's got 9 points. He was named the first star in the NHL last week, and Pierre-Luc Dubois has taken a big step. He's got 4 goals this season. Nate Schmidt on the back end, 6 points, 6 assists. I mean, the Jets are still, I wrote a story on Sunday. At that point, the Jets were leading the NHL in defensive scoring. Last year, they were 31st. So it's one of those things where it's like guys are actually stepping up. And one of the quotes from Paul Stastny, when somebody asked him last week about, what is it, about stepping up and guys having step in and that sort of thing. He's like, it's easier said than done. And we've seen that in the past when Mark Scheifele's gone down, or somebody else, but it's usually been Scheifele, and guys just haven't been able to kind of replace what he brings to the lineup. Well, the Jets have kind of galvanized themselves and done that. And so that's probably the biggest thing that I've seen here. The most important thing for this Jets team is trying to find a way to live without a top player if they go down, and they've done that. They've done that without 2. Now, arguably, Blake Wheeler's taken a step back in terms of his production and his pace of play. But with Mark Scheifele out, I mean, this is a guy that's led the Jets in points, point per game player. He wants to be on the Olympic team and all that. There's a lot of drive in Mark Scheifele. He had 2 assists in his only couple of games that he played. But yeah, it's been very interesting just to see how this Jets team has kind of actually stepped up this time. And it's not just, trying to eke out a 1-0 win. No, they're scoring a lot of goals. They got 16 goals in their last 3 games. So yeah, it's been good for the team. What have you seen? I mean, that's what I've seen from them. Has there been anything different or anything additional that you've seen from them?
Well, I'll tell you what comes to mind for me off of these last 2 games with Scheifele and Wheeler out of the lineup, and that's maybe Paul Maurice has been given some food for thought on what he's going to do with his lines from here on in.
Yep.
Because Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois, maybe not Nikolai Ehlers to this point, he has not off to a great start, but we know he's capable of being a top line guy. They can put together top lines without Blake Wheeler right now. Mark Scheifele is going to be in the top 6, and I'm not trying to throw Blake Wheeler under the bus. He's still an important player on this team, but you could conceivably have him on the third line. You could play him with Adam Lowry and Paul Stastny, and you could create 2 very good top 6 lines without him in there. He can still be a power play player, can still be an important player on this team, but I just wonder if the opportunity has been given to the coaching staff to maybe do things a little bit differently, because clearly Kyle Connor is flourishing the last couple of games without his regular line mates. And that makes you say, who's the driver on that line, right? We know they all are, but Connor has really been the driver this year for everything. And I'm also very impressed with what Pierre-Luc Dubois has done. I think when you see him, what happened last year was, everyone hoped it would be an aberration, particularly him, but you just didn't know. You didn't know coming in. People said he was in better shape. People said he was in a better frame of mind coming into this season, but you just didn't know. And I think when you get 4 goals in the first 5 games, as he has, and he's been a good net front presence, and he's been driving to the net, and he's been doing things like that, those are just great signs for the Winnipeg Jets. And obviously, Scott, we got to touch on the other side of all this, and that's the fact that defensively and in terms of what Connor Hellebuck's been doing, it hasn't been spectacular. And the hope was it was going to be better with the additions of Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon. But at this point, it's not. There are some theories as to why that aren't necessarily about this team. But what are your thoughts on the team's overall defensive play so far?
Yeah, it hasn't been great, obviously. I mean, they're giving up just not as many goals as they're putting up, obviously, because they're winning. They've won their past two games. But prior to that, they were giving up, 4 goals a night, 5 goals a night. That wasn't good enough. And uh, part of that, yeah, and like you said, part of that isn't, just that, but I think, the penalty kill is so bad right now. You have it, I believe I was looking it up just before we started here. I think it's like 54.6%. That's horrible. I mean, that's the only team worse than you is the Arizona Coyotes, and the team above you is the Montreal Canadiens. And those teams are in the bottom of their, respective divisions. And the Jets need a good penalty kill. We've seen this over and over again. They've been able to outscore it right now, which is fine, but it's not good when you go into a game and you're like, okay, well, we give up 4 power plays to the opposing team, and we're likely to give up 2 goals. It's just like, this team wouldn't have lost against Minnesota without the PK. This team wouldn't have, some of the scares that they had, maybe even in the last game, where it was like, okay, you're up 6-3 in the third, but they score another one, and then it goes from there, and then you're just kind of worried. And the PK is what has allowed other teams to kind of get back in the game when the Jets have been up by a couple of goals at certain points in hockey games. So yeah, I mean, I'm not so sure. I mean, I think the team defense will come together. I mean, you have every pairing this year other than DeMello and Stanley pairing is different, so those things are going to take a little bit of time. I don't know if 5 games is the best barometer for that yet, but I think it all starts on the PK, and I think Connor Hellebuck has to play better. I mean, he's had 1 game, I believe, so far, where he's had, better than like a 920 save percentage. At least 3 of his games, if not 4 of them, have been under 900. That's not a Vezina caliber goalie right now. And part of that has been a couple fluke goals that we saw in a few of the games, and part of that's been the PK that's let him down. But he's got to make some more saves too. But again, I thought he played very well in his 38 save performance against Anaheim back here last week. So yeah, it's interesting. I think the team is better. I think they're trying a different type of way of playing. It's more aggressive. It's quick, trying to get out of the defensive zone. But we've seen again at times this team get hemmed in their own zone again, and that's those are some of the trends that you kind of see that have permeated throughout the last few years. So I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. I'm worried about it just yet. But it's certainly a point of contention on this team, and it's something that they've always had to improve. And now they've added almost $10 million in defensemen. It has to improve. I mean, that's all there is to it. That said, I think Josh Morrissey's played a little bit better. I think Nate Schmidt and Josh, again, like I said, going back to that, the offensive output, I think that those guys are putting up points, which is big for this team. But yeah, to be a Stanley contender like this team has talked about, that us in the media have talked about, they need to kind of batten down the hatches a little bit on the back end. So yeah. You want to say something? I can see it.
Yeah, I do. I want to say something. I wanted to point out that the story that I wrote today, talking to Josh Morrissey and Paul Maurice about the net front and how cross-checking has been, limited, obviously, by new enforcement of penalty calls in that area. And everyone is noticing a difference already. And you saw it in the Nashville game. The Jets alone had 3 tip-in goals, basically 2 of them, one by Dubois and one by Vesalainen, and they were standing all alone in front, and just a nice little soft midair pass by Nate Schmidt, they were able to knock it down and into the net. That looked way too easy, to be honest. And I think the Jets defensemen are noticing that as well. And Paul Maurice suggested that might be part of the reason why they've struggled on the PK, because you're used to be able to clear the net in a different fashion. It's going to take a while, I think, this season for everyone in the NHL to adjust to that and figure out how they're going to clear the front of the net without using that tactic. And, I look at the Montreal Canadiens and how they got to the Stanley Cup final last year,
Yeah.
and they have those big bruising 4 defensemen back there, and Weber and Sherratt and Edmondson and Petrie. And those guys were experts at clearing the front of the net. Well, those guys are not going to be able to do it the same way that they did last year either. And it's going to affect a lot of teams. I don't love that it might, impact the larger players in the league, because those guys still play a big role, but they're going to have to figure out how to do it, and they're going to have to do it in a way that isn't going to get them a penalty. And so I think we'll see that for a while. It seems like the Jets have taken advantage of it. It seems like the Jets have been taking advantage of it all along the way here. And Paul Maurice he started talking about that without even being asked specifically about the cross-checking. He was specifically being asked about why scoring is up in the NHL. So it's pretty obvious that is a big part of it. And anyway, the Jets head out to Anaheim. They're going to play the Ducks and the LA Kings and the San Jose Sharks. The last time they went to California, not good. Looking better now, but Scott, there's still another loss away from a lot of hand wringing in this town because their expectations are high. What do you think you're going to see going forward here with this team?
Yeah, I think they figured out Anaheim. I think the Jets had a lot of expectation going to that first game, and they kind of let that get to them a little bit. We saw it again. They played very well against Anaheim the second time, around, and handily beat them. I think LA is kind of the X factor here. They have a pretty good team now. Drew Doughty's injured, and so was Quinton Byfield too. I'm interested in LA. LA has kind of been that one rebuild where they've really injected a lot of youth into that lineup, and it's been good. I think they can beat San Jose, but again, San Jose is an interesting one too. I think San Jose is. They don't have the distraction this year as much with Evander Kane being out right now and all that stuff. And that team seems a little more cohesive now. Let's just say that. So I'm interested in that too. But I think the Jets have kind of found their stride a little bit here. And I don't think Blake Wheeler nor Mark Scheifele are going to be back on this road trip anyways. It's a pain in the butt to try and get one of them down there, and Wheeler doesn't get out of protocol until tomorrow, I believe it is at the earliest. I suspect, after being gone for almost 3 weeks now, 2 weeks for sure, that they're going to let him go home and see his family. So, I think these lines are going to have a chance to continue doing what they're doing, and we've seen it's been very good. Paul Maurice has talked a lot about opportunities and guys stepping up and taking those opportunities and that sort of thing. I think we're going to see more of that. I think it's going to be a successful road trip. That being said, the PK, like I said earlier, it's got to be better. So that's one of the big things that they'll be, making sure that they're, putting some time and effort into. But this is your last time out in California. It's a chance to really kind of string together a few wins here. They obviously have 2. They could be on a 5-game winning streak by the time they come home, and then they, at that point, you have a 7-game homestand, a season-long 7-game homestand to look forward to. And the Jets obviously played well back here in Winnipeg. So I think it's an opportunity trip to put some more points on the board and kind of get back this season. Not a 500 team, but get this team back, well over that 500 column. So, that'll be, and I think, you're going to see, you might even see Eric Comrie on this trip for the first time. We'll see how that goes. Maybe not, but I think Connor Hellebuyck too is wanting to play better as well. And I think there's a lot of guys on this team that are like, oh, I've had a pretty good start this season. They want to keep it up, and part of that is the lines that they're playing on and the people that they're playing with. So there's obviously room for improvement. We know there always is in the NHL for this team, especially defensively. There's a lot of it. But I think this trip will be a good chance again to kind of, to kind of just get back out there without that kind of expectation of the beginning of the season, and just kind of play hockey that they have been kind of playing now for the last few games.
Well, Mark Scheifele, we do not know if he will be back on this road trip either. He is in COVID protocol. He did test positive. As far as we know, asymptomatic, but nothing has changed in his status, which means he hasn't yet had 2 negative tests 24 hours apart. Could happen any day, but we don't know if it'll happen at all in the next couple of days, and we'll have to wait and see. And of course, you have been on the IR as well this weekend, Scott. Very good of you to power through and do the show here. Hope you're feeling better, man.
I am. Yeah, it's good to be back. Good to be talking again.
Right on, Scott. Always great to talk to you, and great to talk about the Winnipeg Jets. So for Scott Billeck, I'm Ted Wyman. You've been watching Jet Setting on winnipegsun.com.